In this video, I'm going to tell you why I've decided to sell all my records and CDs. There was a time in my life when it would never have crossed my mind to sell them. Why would I? After all, I've been a record collector since I was a child. By 11, I'd already had a collection of 1,000 records. My records were such an important part of my life. So much so that I can still remember where I bought many of them. People were buying and giving me records from when I was 3 years old. My first record was bought for me by a man named Alf Silver in the October of 1963. What was it? It was the Beatles' I Wanna Hold Your Hand. The first single I remembered buying was Eddie Floyd's Knock on Wood in the October of 1966. That August I'd already bought my first album, The Beatles' Revolver, with my birthday money from a week before the album was released. They weren't the start of my collection. I'd regularly been given records by friends of my parents who knew my love of music. Coming from a fairground family, the ride owners would give me the records they no longer played on the rides as they replaced them with new ones. And from an age where I could go to record shops on my own, I pretty much spent all my money on records. And so over the years I built a large record collection that I loved and never thought I'd sell. But in 1991, life took a turn for me, and with a wife, a 4-year-old son and a new baby boy, our world was turned upside down when I lost my business. In the space of just a few months, we lost pretty much all our income, and without having a way to keep going, I had no choice but to sell my records. With some of the remaining money I had, I bought a market stall and decided to do the markets. But not having any money for stock, I used the only thing I had readily available, my record collection. Selling my record collection was heartbreaking for me, but I did what I had to do to feed my family. 5 days a week I went from town to town on markets and sold records that were a part of my life. So many times I'd watch someone pick up one of my beloved albums and bring it to me and pay for it, and then as they walked away with the record, I'd grieve like I'd lost a family member. As the weeks went on, I did go out and buy more records and CDs to replace what I'd sold so that I could keep the business going. But those that I bought in meant nothing to me. To me, they were just stock. One by one, I sold so many records that were part of the fabric of my life. All my favourite records went, and as time went on, I became numb about them. And so when I ended up being able to stop doing the markets because I'd found work, I was left with loads of records, but very few that were left from my original collection. What I was left with was about 500 to 600 albums, and the same probably in singles, but there was no attachment to them. They ended up being stored in my loft, and that's where they stayed. Here's a clue as to how much I cared about them. When my marriage ended in 2010, I left all of the records behind and I just took the CDs that I had. And a couple of years later, when my ex-wife had a clear out, all those records went to the rubbish tip. Luckily I'd been DJing for a while at that stage, and as I used my computer for a playout system, I had a collection of music. It was just on hard drives. Mostly they were from CD compilations that I'd bought, ripped, and then put back in their boxes. Over the years since then, I've bought and built another collection. But the truth is, I have no real attachment to it in the same way as I did to my original one. And over the last few years, I've barely bothered to play them. As soon as I bought anything, I converted them to MP3s, as by this stage I was working in radio and was using computers as a playout system for that as well. And what I have now is a collection that I could easily part with, as I have everything backed up onto hard drives, and that's what I play 99% of the time. I only play my records and CDs when I buy something to fill in a gap in my collection, and once it's been digitised, I don't play the record or the CD again. And so selling them this time holds no fear for me, as they don't really mean too much to me anymore. I've decided the only thing I'll keep will be my Beatles collection of LPs and my favourite album by Stevie Wonder. The rest won't be a problem to part with, as to be honest, there's nothing worth a fortune there, and as I don't play them, I'd rather convert them into money and use that for something that I do want. There was a time when I loved to have a record playing session and just grab them off the shelf and play them one by one. But it's been years since I last did that. These days, after hearing music really loud for years, my hearing isn't what it was. And to be honest, listening to MP3s works just fine for me. Even the records I replaced don't have the same allure that my original collection had. I still have my memories of my records, where I bought them, and how I used to feel as a kid watching that record spin round and around on the turntable and looking at the covers. I remember the feelings I used to have when I visited record shops, and I know how I felt as I flipped through the records searching for my next buy, and how I couldn't wait to get the records home quickly enough so I could hear them on my record player. But those feelings were from a time gone by. A time when I had my original collection. When I started to rebuild my collection, it never felt the same. If you've ever been in this position, I would love to know your thoughts, because I enjoy interacting with the community of viewers. I've never revived that excitement of walking through those hallowed doors looking for that next purchase. I still buy the occasional record or CD, but usually it's to pick up something that was in my parents' record collection, because as I've gotten older, I've become more nostalgic. It's lovely to hear the strains of a song that my parents loved, but I hated at the time. To hear those songs brings back lovely memories of my parents, and that's why I buy them. But once I've digitised them, they too just sit in the racks. I still play music every day, and I still love hearing songs, and I still love those albums that I've always loved. The only thing that's changed is how I feel about the physical records and CDs. And that's because they're not part of the collection that I loved. Those feelings went with all the records and CDs I sold all those years ago. I don't regret selling them because I had a family I needed to feed, but I still can't get over selling that first collection. So you see, selling this collection will be a doddle, because to me, they're just records and CDs. And if I'm not playing them, there's no point keeping them. And if you'd like to know why I don't play them anymore, click on the link up there and I'll tell you.